You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering Finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seat belts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast. This week, we're doing something a little bit more LGS focused. Basically talking about what an LGS does during the holidays as far as sales go. If there's differences between Black Friday, Cyber Monday, small business, leading up to Christmas, whatever the case may be. Yep. So with that, let's take it away.
Yep. So the LGS is a little more interesting. This is the reason I wanted to broach this topic was because from a vendor perspective, a lot of people are going to do the same things, and we kind of follow the same trend that you see in big box retail, essentially. If you have a website, you're going to follow these trends, and vendors are pretty much kind of straightforward on that narrow. There's not a lot of unique opportunity to create some kind of flavor for Thanksgiving or Cyber Monday. It just becomes this kind of expected avenue for you. It might be a coupon code, or it might be a new product release, but there's just going to be sales across the entirety of the platform. And one of the major reasons for this is because we want to move stock. We want to move as much product as we can out of the warehouse and help us reduce our footprint for corporate taxes. We want to really kind of drop that number down, and going to the new year for re-ups, make sure we have the cash flow we need to basically start our fiscal year pretty strong. This is not really a Q4 cash grab or anything like that. It really is to just free up inventory space.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the important things about this is a lot of times what you're doing, and this is evidenced by the store I work at, was basically, hey, what's the stuff we're sitting on? Let's get rid of all of it.
Yep.
The sunk cost doesn't matter. We just need something to get churn going. And the thing that's really interesting is a lot of times it's not your primary verticals, because it's stuff that you tried out. You know, maybe you were into flesh and blood for a little bit and it just didn't work out, and you're just sitting on a bunch of it. Well, great. Just get rid of it for below wholesale. Just get rid of it. That space is more valuable to you as something that moves, especially at the local level. Like, you don't have a lot of space. It's not like we have a 1 million square foot warehouse where we can just dump stuff and forget about it. Like, you've got a limited amount of space, both up front and in back.
Yep. You
got to get a churn, so it's important to start getting that stuff through there.
And that's something we touched on when we talked about holiday sales a while ago and how an LGS kind of gets ready for that. And you discussed having to overtake some of your place space. Some of your display space is going to get cramped, overflowed, because there's product that needs to be displayed to be able to move. For me, on the vendor side, it's just I might spend a little more on pay-to-click ads, or I might spend a little more with time with my art department, say we need these new assets to link people around the website better to get to our deals when they're looking at something like Flesh and Blood, right? And we just have a bunch of unlimited edition of whatever the new set is that we want to get out the door and prep for the next one. Well, then we'll probably create a bunch of new banner ads and toss them out over there, or like I said, change our strategy for ad networks and stuff like that to push those new assets.
And I think one of the interesting things specifically is the difference between Thanksgiving and Christmas sales go is when the stuff you're trying to blow out for Thanksgiving, the philosophy is, all right, we're going to have more locals for Thanksgiving. It's going to be people that are back in town for college, whatever else. You don't have, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas running out on Black Friday to get a box of cards for their grandkid or something. That's just not what they do. So a lot of times it's not just about pushing out the sealed product at the LGS. It's also about pushing out singles that may be stale. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll have like 20% off singles under $100, because that's the stuff that, look, you can just pay me TCG after fees and I'm more than happy. You can buy out all the fetch lands at TCG after fees. Don't care. Please take them, because that's what I'm going to get for them eventually anyways. And it's a way to churn through that. Whereas when it gets to Christmas, it is like you said, you're pushing more ads, you're pushing more presence on social media, maybe radio or television or printed, whatever else, to try to get those grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles into the store for those boxes, because that's when it's a lot more, okay, now we have people shopping, the people coming in, they didn't rush here on Black Friday because they know the stuff's going to be there regardless.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things is obviously the release calendar plays a little bit into this, because if we have a new release, which I guess we don't have a new release until January for Magic, touch on that later. It makes it a lot easier to just like, okay, now we can do maybe sales on that same stuff we did for Black Friday, maybe a little bit better, maybe not as good, but try to blast those out to people that may not know you exist, even though they live 5 to 10 minutes from your store, because they're not the kids playing the games. They don't take people to play the games. So you get a little bit more presence there. And that's where those ad pushes can be really, really important, because as an LGS, Thanksgiving doesn't really grow your client base, but Christmas does.
Yeah. So when you're heading out of Thanksgiving and into the holiday season proper, there's going to be a little bit of downtime while you reset and restage everything. Maybe you get a window display done either in Paint, or you just reset the window if you have the opportunity to, you have the space. What does I don't want to use the word setup here because I think that's a little narrow, but like, what is the strategy for a fall holiday sale compared to Thanksgiving? Like, for me as a vendor, traditionally working for Troll, what we were doing is a lot of bundling. We want to get somebody to buy as much product as we think they should, and it's not an overwhelming amount. It's kind of like the old, what were they called, the holiday bundles that they used to do in Magic, where it's a big square box but there's a lot of stuff on the inside, and try and create these kind of beginner kits, kind of like that. Or maybe if you buy a sealed box of whatever the set is, let's say draft boosters for instance, we're also going to bundle in some sleeves or what have you. But it turns out we're not just bundling for convenience. Again, it's the idea of moving stale product, so we're going to try and bundle some stuff together. Or if in the case of, I don't want to say Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon, Magic can do this a little bit, where you put a bunch of pre-cons together and you kind of, again, create the idea of that starter kit, or just like the, hey, sit down and play with your friends over the holiday kind of kit, and try and put a lot of products together that just take up a lot of unnecessary floor space. Or we think are slow churners compared to anything else. You're not really going to see a whole lot of singles sales at this point in time. It's very difficult to put holiday sales together like this. Some people might do some kitschy stuff. So as you move through the holidays, they might do color pairings for the appropriate holiday that's upcoming in the games you're putting together. So that happens here and there, but not all that much. And again, you're definitely going to see some discount codes go out. There will be some holiday discount codes, and they might increase over time the closer you get to the holidays, to kind of create this weird rush where some people might be fine waiting to try and get 15 or 20% off a large order, but in the interim, as that percentage grows over time, you might lose out as other people move to the website. So it's all about getting people to the site and shopping around, building a cart across multiple verticals, and just trying to check out with as much product as possible.
Yeah. And I think that's the really important thing, is you're with those Christmas sales, like, and this is the overarching theme of this time of year, is get rid of as much stuff as possible. Free up space for the new year, new releases, whatever else. Well, obviously, if we didn't move as much stuff during Thanksgiving, we needed to incentivize to make those larger buys to get more out. So that's when you do start to see those, even at the local level. It's, all right, well, our quantity discounts may have been if you ordered 10 of something before. Well, we're going to drop it down to 5 now, because look, if you're getting 3, well, sure, I'll get an extra 2 and get the quantity discount, but I'm not going to get an extra 7 to hit the quantity discount.
Yeah.
So on the stuff that's a little bit more stale, you can do stuff like that. And something that some stores do is actually, there's a couple I know that basically on the stuff they really want to get rid of, which right now is like Wixos, it's a waifu card game, and then Flesh and Blood. They're doing straight across trade. Like they will give you full retail on anything over $10 towards the product.
That's right. You mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, because the thought is, look, if I'm going to get a product that may sit for a while, I'd rather have cardboard that takes up way less space than this box. And you'll do it along with the price drops, where you may sell a Flesh and Blood box for $90 normally. You're selling it for $50 now, and you're doing straight across trade for it. Great, sure. I'm only getting, I'm giving $30 on it or something is the equivalent. Fine. I get, a Mana Vault. cool. I can sell that Mana Vault way easier than that Flesh and Blood box that's been sitting there for 6 months or a year.
Yeah, and this actually kind of bumps up against something that we talked about a while ago when we were talking about shows when they were more active. So you're gonna take retail for that box rate. You're gonna stay even, but when somebody comes in for that Mana Vault, there's a chance that they're going to trade, and that's where you win. You don't usually. And it's weird to say that, and it makes this industry seem kind of slanted in what we do, kind of aggressive and anti-client. But at the end of the day, as a vendor, you love to trade because that's where you
That's
really
where the margins
win.
are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even with the bump, that vault costs, what is it, like 100 and some odd? Depends. I think, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm a bad EDH player. I don't play it, and I have my one.
It's forever a $50 card to me, so that's why I said trade it straight across. But I know at this point I'm paying like $45.50 at a booth.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's like 40, right?
Okay,
So you're gonna
40,
you're gonna take 40 in trade, but the retail on
Sure.
that trade is gonna be like 50 or 60. So you're gonna come out back ahead of that Flesh and Blood box or that Pokemon box, that Yu-Gi-Oh box, that stale ass Kaldheim box.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of trade at the end of the day. So you're more than happy to do that. It's a strategy that's afforded to you as the LGS, especially with that kind of visibility. As a vendor, I'm not going to do that. I'll have my blowout sales at some other time of the year, and usually around tax time, and we will blow out usually quantity.
Yeah.
So to your point, the point that you just made, dropping from 10 to 5, we'll probably do something like that over time. We'll bundle here and there. We'll do the
sure.
box and some kind of steel deck and to try and incentivize moving the product before we go just absolute blowout and we start bundling boxes together, and before we move to liquidation.
Yeah. And I think that's the hope is obviously that you don't have to hit liquidation, which is why you, even though it may only be percentage points above liquidation, it doesn't matter. You'll try to get something before you hit that liquidation stage. You just need to.
Yes.
Sorry, that's just how it is.
Oh, yeah.
And,
especially for an LGS.
Yeah, exactly. And it's especially now as an LGS, because sales are down across the board, it becomes much more important to, and I know we harp on this all the time, not get caught in that sunk cost fallacy of, look, I'm in for 45. I need 45. No, get whatever you can out of that, because that money will churn into other stuff faster than that box is, or those singles are, or whatever.
Yep.
It's just much, much more friendly to do it that way.
So we went from Thanksgiving to the holiday sales. In between there exists that kind of weird Cyber Monday sale. Yeah. And as a vendor with a website, I'm expected to do something, and I can kind of roll my Thanksgiving sales into Cyber Monday and maybe do, again, some like weird kitschy stuff on Cyber Monday if I want to. As an LGS, is that even a blip?
So it is, but it's basically just an extension of what we were doing for Black Friday. Mm-hmm. The really interesting thing is Small Business Saturday, because Small Business Saturday, you'll have a lot more of your in-game stuff, in-store stuff, where you need to come in and support me locally. Mm-hmm. And that's when you'll see a lot of those like single sales and stuff like that, because, now I have an incentive to go to my local game store on this day, which goes back to the Thanksgiving thing, where you're expecting more of your locals in there, because it's not going to be people out shopping for a present for their kid or something, or their friend. They're not going to do it they're not coming to your store on Black Friday for that. Yeah. It's going to be your local guys. So that's when you'll have, discounts on singles, increased loyalty rewards if you have a store reward program. If you do like weekly raffles for store credit or stuff like that, you may do a couple extra on that Saturday, just for people that are in store. Yeah. Just things like that I think are generally, you want to promote your in-store experience then. Mm-hmm. And then Cyber Monday is just that extension of the Black Friday sale. You just run it from Friday to Monday with a little bit of an extra burst on that Small Business Saturday.
Got it. Makes sense. And and this also seems like kind of a weird topic to broach, because, we've been in the cultural zeitgeist for Check's Watch over 30 years. And the idea of a Black Friday sale at an LGS or a comic store was not something that existed when we were younger. It's just, as this comes up, rampant consumerism, capitalism, etc., what does the LGS matter when people are being trampled at Walmart for a TV? Like, people aren't looking at the LGS. And then in time, this seems like another, not feast or famine moment, but another this is what we have to do to survive because people are expecting it. They're going to be out anyway, and if they don't see a sale here, they're not going to stop here because that's the mindset.
Yep.
Like,
and I think that's important too, because we're getting to a point where those feast or famine moments may be getting more. I don't know if it's necessarily feast or famine moment, but that experience for an LGS may be getting more common over the next couple of years because you've got, down economy, wallet fatigue, increasing anger towards Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro for how Magic is branding itself, especially after the Bank of America downgrade and everything. Obviously, the Twitter sphere is an echo chamber, but there are so many people that are upset about what they're doing with Magic 30, how they're handling things, that you may actually start losing people as an LGS. So you may have some more famine moments. So having these sales, not just as like, hey, let's make our year for the holidays, but literally as a let's set up for the next 3 to 4 months because we need something.
Okay.
We need to be able to weather the storm.
Yeah.
I was just talking to a couple friends that own stores last week, and we all of us were like, there's going to be a shit ton of stores closing over the next 2 years. It's going to be a lot of people that like opened a store pre-COVID, during COVID, whatever, and don't necessarily know how to weather the downtimes because they've only known the feast. And the famine can be really bad.
Yeah.
And you're going to see a lot of stores closing, and that's where it is very important to now have this preparation, have this runway kind of through the holidays, because you'll have more exposure, more money coming through. Like, try to emphasize this as much as possible to get as much stuff as possible so that you can actually be set up for the next 6 to 8 months.
It's your insulation, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's how you insulate yourself against that imminent closure that I think a lot of stores are going to hit, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, the way you were talking, it makes it kind of seem like quarterly sales are something that not necessarily to expect, but if you start seeing, it's really just to kind of help insulate and make sure that you can move, not necessarily from one quarter to the next, but maybe these are setting up the next 6 to 8 months, like you said. It just helps push everything out a little bit longer, make sure that you can still buy into product, etc. One of the LGSs that I have up here when 2x2 came out, their money was tied up in all the standard sets that had come previously. And when I asked how much you're going, we've heard about the distro cuts, what are you going to pick up? And they said it doesn't matter what the distro cut is. We can't afford to get full allocation because all our money is tied up in these standard sets that were just illiquid for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to support 2 stores, and it just came at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's, it used to be in the past, as a store, you could almost rely on your distro to help you out when you needed. They would have suggestions or be able to cut deals, whatever. That's not the case anymore. They don't care, and through no fault of their own. They've got to make theirs too, and manufacturers are making it harder for them to make their margins. You need to rely on yourself and your player base. That's how you're going to get through it. And customer base. Increasing your exposure to a new customer base is one of the ways to maximize that, which is ultimately the point of all of these sales.
Yep. Makes sense. And it's nice to talk about this because we talked about it generally when we talked about the setup episode, but we never talked about the difference between the 2 sales, what's going to happen at one point or another, or what the goal really was for both of these sales from an LGS perspective. So I'm really glad we were able to kind of pivot to this pretty quickly. Now, again, as a vendor, that's basically what I'm going to do. I've talked about everything. You're going to see the same stuff kind of all over the place. You might see deeper discounts here or there. You might see some kind of stepwise percentages. But across the board, vendors are all going to try and accomplish the same thing. Similar to an LGS, free up some space, free up some capital, dump whatever is illiquid as best as you can at hopefully an amount of profit, and rely on your shopper profiles, i.e. the people that you are bringing to your website, and bundle your products accordingly because you have the data that tells you how to do that. So you're going to see more interesting things there versus the LGS. Like I said up top, I believe I have like one anecdote about like the best LGS style sale I've ever seen, and it was actually at the comic store I used to play Magic at. I call them an LGS because they sold every trading card game there from a seal perspective, no singles, and
Okay.
and Inquest. That was it. Like, that's how they bundled it together. Otherwise, it was the comic shop, and they did some, as every comic shop does, some statues and like the Green Lantern, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So
The nerd approximate stuff.
exactly, yeah. Whatever floats around in the ephemera. So on December 24th, I was trying to think of this because I couldn't remember how the hours sunk up. I think it started at 11 a.m. running until midnight, and at midnight it locked in. But it was 2% increasing every hour off of select items in the store, and select items were basically everything that wasn't TCG sealed, because the margins were so thin that once you get past the discount point, you're running in the negatives, whereas everything else had the standard in-store markup, and they were just cherry on. And so basically 12:01 December 25th rolls around, everything that's on sale is on sale for 25% off.
That's
for the
pretty
next
good.
yeah for the next couple of hours.
Yeah.
And it's basically how I got like all of my supplies for the next, I don't know how long.
That's really good, actually. Yeah.
Like at that point in time, there were no monster binders, no ultra pro premiums. It was all D rings. So I like the D rings that I used for the next few years, all like
All that
handful of
stuff.
pages, sleeves, etc. It was like one of the best sales I've ever been able to take a part of as a consumer. And you will see vendors do stuff like that. You mentioned your LGS will as well, but in a different way. It'll change to be like bundles or maybe percentage changes from Thanksgiving to Christmas kind of stuff. You're not going to see this stepwise thing unless that's just somebody's sales platform.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
it was a plus idea because we got there at, like I said, at midnight, picked up a bunch of stuff. I don't think we checked out until like 12:30. But
pretty good.
Yeah, the people that were there for comic related stuff, that definitely sad they waited too long, because all that stuff in the ephemera, the big stuff, was like gone, all the interesting stuff. But as a gamer, that left the rest of the stuff for me, so I was pretty happy about that.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. You ready for picks?
Let's do it.
Okay. I think I went first last week.
Yes. So we're going to do something interesting with picks this week.
Mm-hmm.
We're not picking stuff you should pick up. We're picking stuff you should unload.
Yeah.
So I am actually going for Eternal Master's Force of Will, which may seem like a weird one for me to say to unload, granted how prevalent it is through every format ever. Hear me out. Dom-U in January.
Mm-hmm.
Or, sorry, Dom Remastered in January. Yeah. Old Border Force of Will comes in foil. Dom Remastered, I simply look at the price trajectory of what happened with Time Spiral Remastered. That set was a dud for a while, and then it recovered real quick. I don't think that happens here, because we've got like Swords to Plowshares, Counterspell, Force of Will, all getting Old Border treatments, all getting foil treatments. I think Dom Remastered is going to be a very highly reopened set. So I think Force of Will in particular, because that is such a desirable version of Force of Will, will drive the price of the other versions down. Now, that is combined with what we're seeing right now, which is an overall dip across the market. Right now, for example, 95 is paying $70 for Force of Will. 3 months ago, they were at 80. 3 months prior to that, they were at 95. Now, obviously, it's still going to go down more because of the economy. So why not wait for the recovery? Well, the recovery is going to be a year or two away. And while, yes, Force of Will is always an incredibly liquid card, this is something that I would consider buy listing now, knowing that my retail on this in a few months is probably going to be less than what I got out of buy list on it.
Yeah.
I think there is a very realistic chance we see Force of Will drop below $70 for the first time in years.
Yeah.
Any version.
I'm going to bring
think
up
that is very realistic.
The stocks graphs real quick to extend your point. So if we look at the EMA Force of Will from March 2019 to now, every time it peaks, it's like right between May and July. I'm going through this, and then it turns down. May and July, it comes back. And we've hit a plateau for a while on this card, which just dances and eventually recovers after a July dip, so it recovers in September, like 2 months late. And now we're cratering because this next release is in January. Yeah. We know we're getting a set version the set art and whatever you want to call that, the set art and old border, and then a full art alt art version of this card as well. We're getting, as it stands right now, two unique pieces of art, 3 unique printings of this card in this one set.
With foil printings in addition. So that's 6 printings. Not to mention, this is the first set. Well, I guess, sorry. Double Masters had it in collector boosters as well. And if you take a look at the stocks graph and you wheedle into about where Double Masters released, you'll notice that it plateaus and then just drops. So if that's the case, we can expect the same thing to happen again with another release that I honestly think will be more open than Double Masters. I think Brothers War will remain the most open set because of the serialized cards. I think Dom Remastered will be the second most open set. There are too many people that love of the game, whatever else, love the setting, want to be there, want to relive that. Not to mention old border foil Force of Will, which is what Legacy players have wanted for how long now?
Yeah.
And now we have it.
Yep. And the set's just going to be a banger if they also stick to, like, they're kind of disguising it as, like, the Legacy player set with the Dominaria Remastered style thing, but it's more an EDH set, like we saw again. And this is just going to be an EDH player's dream to open this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it has broad appeal, again, for a very honed audience, which is basically, as far as we know, the majority of the player audience. If WotC is touting EDH as the intro format, then you know where the focus is for a lot of these style sets. So, and it's a solid look, and I like the idea of trying to pinpoint things that we're moving out on. Similarly, my card is one to sell, but it's one that I picked on the cast a while ago. So back in year 1, we looked at Simic Ascendancy from Ravnica Allegiance, and we were able to pick them up for about 63 cents a piece the end of May 2019. Right now, they are buy listing on Card Kingdom for $1.30 in cash, $1.69 in credit. And if I had to take a guess, because I don't really pay attention to ABU since their resale options are kind of weak, it's probably a decent price there as well if you want to pick up credit there or just cash out. Either one's fine. And that's where we're looking right now. So Simic Ascendancy plateaued for forever. When I extend the graph out, it spikes at Strixhaven because we got the kind of tokens deck, but that didn't play that well with Simic Ascendancy overall, but there seemed to be a hype train coming in, then it drops and plateaus. And right now, we're in another uptick on this card, and this is where I think we need to make our move, if you didn't sell out already. So, market-wise, this is going for almost $4 a piece. You can probably list for $3.50, and you're making, like, 7x what you paid for on this card, and it's the right time. Taking a look at the overall, like, playability on Rec, it's pretty high, but it sticks to very specific strategies with some cards that we talked about. Experimental Courage is one of the most popular generals for this kind of thing, but we haven't seen a lot of new generals for this yet, and the theme remains the same. Counters on creatures. Cool, we just got Defile, or a Vigor, a card I talked about not too long ago, and a number of other cards that kind of complement the counters on creatures theme. So we're just kind of getting this push to do that, but at the same time we're watering down the part of Simic that wants to win with Simic Ascendancy. People just want to swing out, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're also seeing Simic become more of a part of 3 and 4 color decks rather than just a 2 color deck. So that kind of, again, walks people back from just playing Simic themselves. A new Tatiova doesn't really breed interest in this kind of play pattern. Koma, the Serpent from Call Time, doesn't really breed interest in this kind of play pattern. You need to be able to want to put counters on creatures. We haven't seen that in the main set in a minute. It's all been on the outskirt with commander cards. And now is the time where, if you're still holding from that pick, I feel fine saying, get out. You've made more than enough. Sell into TCG Player if you have the ability to. Move it to Card Kingdom or ABU, wherever you want to pick up cash, and just, say bye, Felicia, and call this back a day. I think there's definitely, there's more room for profit, but I wouldn't want to be holding the bag on this too much longer. And I don't think it matters what version you bought in. I believe when I talked about this, I mentioned I was looking at everything. Set foil, launch party version, I picked up a bunch of them, and it's profit all the way down, and by a wide margin. CK is buying a fair amount of everything, and I would just shove.
Yeah. I think this is one that I think demonstrates really well, like penny stocks paying off pretty well.
Yeah.
Because when it was 71 cents, if you'd spent $70 on it, I mean, you'd have almost 200, or like 150, whatever, on buy list, which is a pretty good return. Obviously, it's not as, flashy as some of the other picks, but I think it's really, really good to demonstrate, hey, guess what? This is what this does.
Yeah.
You can do this kind of thing to help it pay off. And I think the interesting thing to me is that this card went up without increased exposure. Because like you said, there haven't been many cards that have improved the theme.
No.
But it's still seen that upward trajectory. So to me, I am similar to you in that, okay, well, if it's on an upward trajectory, it cannot continue without something to force the theme a little bit, is my worry. So I would also be looking to, I think this is a good time to get rid of it, because who knows when we'll get another card like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the sets we know we have coming out weren't sets that were big on +1/+1 counters, or counters in general, really. Like maybe Ikoria, if there's a mutate creature that puts counters on it, but that's such a fringe possibility that I wouldn't really think that we're going to see anything like that in the next year. So this would be, okay, let's go ahead and do it now, because while everything else is trending down, this card's trending up.
Yeah. The other thing is we're sticking with Phyrexia for the next forever, right? And that idea doesn't lend itself to putting a lot of counters on creatures. It does grow
Infect
creatures.
counters.
Yeah. That's the wrong way, though. Mirrodin as a setting has proved that, yes, it does do counter work on creature, though we no longer use modular. It is very light in enhancing creatures from a permanent perspective, but it does like to enhance with spells and equipment, etc. that don't generate the kind of value that we're looking for. And without great foresight into what's coming in those next sets, like you said, we're not seeing a lot of new product that works with this. It just seems like we're gonna hit up a point where this is gonna stall out, and you might as well just make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah. Makes it a lot easier. Just take the bag and run.
Exactly.
That's what we always say.
So I think that's gonna be it for this week, right?
Yep, that's it.
Yep. So we are at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, and YouTube. If you want to talk to us on the Twitter birds while it's still around, you are
at Thirsty Sizzler.
And I am at Halt I Am Reptar. See you next week.
See ya.